I released a pilot on Amazon. I made a pilot with 3 people mainly behind it. That's it. 3 people. I feel like this video is a long time coming, and I've had a lot of time to think. I've had a lot of events happen around me that I've processed it, and I want to talk about what I've discovered about myself, about my career, and a lot of just reflecting on the choices I've made and the struggles I've been through. I think I want to start with capital Joe, and I want you to understand that every step that was taken to make the pilot was in the effort of taking my education and my personal work experience and my industry know-how and research and development. The process of making the show wasn't blind. It wasn't because I liked it more than other projects. It wasn't a personal thing. It was calculated. I had a lot of thinking, planning, debating that went into making the pilot. I invested so much time and so much money that to just blindly go into something because I'm passionate about it wasn't the smartest thing to do. Wasn't the thing I was going to do. Because I do take risks in my life, but I take calculated risks. And sometimes something comes of it. Most of the time, the only thing I get out of it is learning. Is I learn from what happens. Where I'm at right now, what I feel right now, may not be true in a couple of days, in a couple of weeks, in a couple of months, but I wanted to document the feeling of failure and how ironic it was for me to come to this realization that's what's going on, that's what I'm feeling. And knowing that in September of 2019, during my commencement ceremony, I made a speech. I wrote a speech specifically about failing. And the speech more or less encompassed this idea that we get lost in our perspective, and many of the elements and views outside of ourselves become blurred. We don't even see it. And all we see is a reflection of ourselves. And if your expectations of yourself or your work don't match where you are and what you've done, then you feel like you failed. But the speech was about the fact that somebody else out there, you may not even be aware of, maybe you are, looks up at you and all they see is success and envy. And they look at you and they go, how did you do this? I could have never done that. I wish I could have accomplished what you've accomplished. I wish I could have done or experienced what you experienced. There's almost always going to be somewhere out there, someone who looks at you and what you've done and envies you in one way or another. For me, I look at people who are much more complacent and have more reasonable expectations out of life, more simple, manageable expectations. Now, I know that's broad, but I mean, I appreciate and envy people who appreciate the wonder of life itself, that they enjoy the simple things so much, they don't need this grind to amount to some big avant-garde feeling. And when you're a filmmaker, specifically me, it's always chasing these stories I want to tell because I want it to end with a feeling. I want to communicate ideas. I want to explore perspectives. And so my whole career, my whole life is built around that concept of perspective. And my speech in college was about perspective. The perspective of your failure is someone else's view of success. So I'm not blind to the fact that I'm hypocritical to feel the way I do now, unless I can say I do not stand with what I've said in the past. I do stand by it. I released a pilot on Amazon. I made a pilot with 3 people mainly behind it. That's it. 3 people, excluding the talent in front of the camera. And sometimes the talent in front of the camera was the people behind the camera. And to have the production value, to have the scale and scope and complexity of what I released with that many people, with no budget, with like buying the cheapest used equipment I could possibly find, making lights at Home Depot as our main lights. These little things, to have the results that I have, to put myself out there in the way that I have, I think a lot of people would look at it very differently than I do. And I know that because when I was younger, if I saw myself, I didn't know who I was, and I saw what I was doing when I was younger, I would have that. I would go, oh my gosh, I could never see myself doing that. I think that's why I did it, to prove that I can do it. But my hope was that it would prove to others that I could do it as well. I appreciate you for listening, and I hope that the speech I made back in college follows me through, and I look back at this, and I look back at these struggles, and I see it again, that failure is just a perspective of your own success. So, thank you so much, and do your best to remind yourself of perspective.